My wife planned to kick me out of the house and move her ex in. She said her parents would back her no matter what. So I drove to her dad's office, and by nightfall, she was the one packing boxes while they told me to stay and raise the kids. Hey Reddit! So apparently my wife decided the house her parents own made her the queen of our entire lives. I just smiled, said sure, and watched her plans fall apart in real time. Before we dive into the disaster she created for herself, grab a snack. This mess practically cooked itself. I'm Dante. I'm in my mid-30s, a civil engineer who somehow ended up managing more people than blueprints these days. Married 9 years. 2 kids, Rowan, who never stops asking questions, and Kit, who thinks every couch is a jungle gym. We live in a big house owned by my in-laws, Gideon and Celeste. Estate planning reasons, they said when they gave it to us to live in. Their names are on the deed. Not mine, not Judy's. That part becomes important. Gideon and Celeste live across town, close enough for Sunday dinners, not close enough to share neighbors. Judy, my wife, is early 30s, raised in a house where arguments end the second money gets flashed. She learned that tone long before she learned accountability. For years, anytime we argued about anything bigger than laundry, she'd jab the same line. You don't own this place, Dante. I used to ignore it because picking fights around kids is pointless, and honestly, I never cared whose name was on the paperwork as long as my kids had stability. Turns out I should have paid attention. Things shifted when Judy reconnected with an old friend. She said it the way people say, just running errands. A tone you use when you want the conversation over before it starts. His name was Steve. I remembered him from stories she told early in our marriage. Charming guy, apparently. The kind who lives small but talks big. Judy said they were catching up, nothing serious. I didn't argue. People are allowed to have friends. But then her phone habits changed overnight. Always angled away from me. Face down on tables. Notifications turned off. The classic stuff people think they're being subtle about. She'd disappear for errands that took 3 hours. Location on her phone would go blank. Battery saver mode, she claimed, even when it was 90% charged. Her whole schedule shifted like she was running 2 separate lives. I didn't jump to conclusions. That's not my style. I just watched. Then we had dinner at Gideon and Celeste's. They're old school people. Sunday dinners, firm handshakes, quiet expectations. With them, big calls run like a board vote. Facts on the table, then a decision. Judy's orbit had split lately. Leora hyped every choice she made, while Maeve, once her closest friend, had started to keep her distance. Judy started the evening acting normal, but by dessert, she had this smug tilt to her voice. We were talking casually about houses, maintenance, roof plans, typical homeowner nonsense. And she suddenly said, with this soft little laugh, well, if we ever split, I'm staying here with the kids. Dante will figure it out. She didn't look at me. She didn't. She looked at her parents, like she wanted them to witness the power move. I didn't say anything. No point fighting a line that was clearly rehearsed. I just logged it away, the same way I log structural stress points on a job site. You don't panic about them. You simply take note for later. A couple days after that, Rowan came home from school and dropped the kind of sentence kids don't realize is a grenade. Mom's friend Steve took us for ice cream. He bought sprinkles for Kit, too. I froze for half a second, not out of jealousy, but because it didn't make sense. Judy never mentioned taking the kids anywhere that day, and she definitely never mentioned bringing Steve along. Before I could even process it, Judy snapped at Rowan from the kitchen. It was a group thing. Don't make it sound weird. Rowan looked confused and shut up instantly. That reaction told me more than the actual ice cream trip. Everything that didn't add up suddenly had context. The late errands, the blank locations, the weird confidence when she tossed around divorce comments like they were harmless. Steve wasn't a casual friend. He wasn't even a secret anymore. Not to the kids, at least. That night, after the kids were asleep, I walked past the living room and saw Judy on the couch, phone lighting up her face. She didn't hear me at first. She was smiling at the screen, the kind of smile people don't waste on just friends. I didn't say anything. I didn't even plan to look. But as she turned the phone slightly, the message preview flashed bright enough for me to catch it. Tomorrow, we talk about moving you in. Her thumb hovered over the screen, typing back something I didn't catch. She leaned back into the cushions like someone settling into a throne they believe they earned. I lifted my own phone and snapped a quick photo of her lock screen, not to confront her, just to have an exact record of what I saw. In that moment, the picture was complete. Judy wasn't just cheating. She wasn't just entertaining the idea of leaving. She already had the next chapter written in her head. She thought the house was her trump card. The move that let her swap out her husband for her ex, keep the kids, and stay in the lifestyle she was raised to expect. She thought I'd be easy to push out because the deed didn't have my name on it. I didn't confront her. I didn't make noise. I didn't walk out. I just stood there for a few seconds, unseen, letting the whole scene lock into place like a blueprint finally clicking. Because if she was planning her future without me, then it was time I started planning mine, with the truth fully on the table. And the next day, that truth was finally going to meet the people who actually owned the house she thought she could control. Judy left the house that morning saying she was meeting a mom friend and taking the kids to the park. She said it casually, like she was announcing the weather. Rowan and Kit were excited enough that I didn't overthink it. I kissed them on their heads, told them to have fun, and went back to finishing a site report. Around noon, I checked my phone out of habit and saw Judy's location blink off. Not fade, not glitch, blink gone. 10 minutes later, it popped back on somewhere across town, then disappeared again. Usually, that only happens when she turns off tracking or switches apps in a way that forces location permissions to shut off. She'd used battery saver as her excuse before, but she'd pulled that line too many times for it to mean anything. I called her once just to make sure the kids were okay. Straight to voicemail. I'm not the kind of guy who jumps into panic mode. If the kids were in danger, my gut would have told me. Instead, I kept everything steady. I finished my work, made dinner, helped Rowan with homework through video call when the school app pinged, and waited. They never came home. Judy had dropped them at Gideon and Celeste's without telling me. She texted after the fact, "Kids are with my parents. They wanted extra grandparent time." Translation: she needed freedom for whatever she was doing. The quiet in the house felt unnatural. Normally, Rowan is asking 100 questions about planets or dinosaurs. Kit is usually running circles until someone asks them to stop. That night, the house was still. I cleaned up, checked the calendar for the kids' school reminders, and noticed an icon I'd never seen before on the shared iPad calendar. We also keep a shared household email for bills and school notices, so anything about addresses or utilities hits that inbox fast. A brunch reservation. Just initials. J. Her decoy label when she wants to hide plans. 11:30 a.m., Midtown Bistro. The exact place near Steve's neighborhood. The reservation had been created the night before. Judy didn't brunch. Judy barely woke up before 8 unless we had something scheduled. And she definitely never wrote anything on the shared calendar unless it was for the kids. That was enough confirmation to justify checking for myself, not to chase her, not to create drama, just to know the truth before I talked to anyone else about it. I grabbed my keys, drove toward Midtown, and stayed quiet the whole time. No music, no calls, no imaginary arguments. I just needed to see reality instead of guessing. When I turned onto Steve's block, the evidence was already there. Judy's car was parked right outside his building. No kids' booster seats unbuckled in the back. No park bag. No signs she'd been anywhere near swings or slides that day. I didn't wait around. I didn't go knock. I drove right past, circled the block to make sure I wasn't imagining it, then headed home. By the time she walked through the front door a couple hours later, she had a glow on her face she didn't try to hide. She looked satisfied. That's the only word for it. As soon as she noticed me looking at her, the glow dropped and she switched into defensive mode, like someone flipping a switch. "You're home early," she said, even though I hadn't gone anywhere. "I live here," I answered. She tossed her keys on the counter and went straight to wiping down the perfectly clean sink. Her nervous habit. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't corner her. I didn't accuse her of anything, even though her whole posture already confirmed it. I asked one question, calm enough to make her flinch. "Where were you exactly?" Her shoulders locked up. Then she whipped around with wide eyes like the question was an attack. "Seriously," she snapped. "You're doing this again? You're paranoid, Dante. My therapist told me your spiraling creates half our arguments." Interesting, considering her therapist quit on her last year after she kept lying during sessions. I kept my expression neutral. Let her talk. She huffed loudly, crossing her arms. "I can't deal with this controlling behavior. If you push me like this, I swear I'll take the kids in this house. My parents will back me up. You know that?" There it was again. The house. Her favorite weapon. The assumption that the property she didn't own somehow made her invincible. She always said it like a final strike, like she believed it ended the conversation. But this time, something shifted. Because for the first time, I wasn't hearing a threat. I was hearing her reveal the exact blind spot she was counting on. I looked her straight in the eyes. Calm. No anger. No fear. Just the truth spoken plain. "They own the deed, Judy. Not you." Her face froze mid-breath. For a few seconds, she just stood there gripping her phone. Then she pivoted, dropped the defensive tone, and switched into something sharper. She walked past me into the living room, sat down, and patted the couch like she was inviting me to sit for a scheduled appointment. "Fine," she said. "Let's just talk now since you're clearly in a mood." I didn't sit. I leaned on the doorway. She inhaled like someone preparing to read from a script. "I'm done with this marriage. I'm with Steve, and I want a divorce." There it was. No build-up, no hesitation, no apology. She delivered it like it was part of an agenda she'd practiced all day. The same glow she'd walked in with earlier returned, now mixed with control. Before I could respond, she kept going. "I've worked everything out," she said, smoothing her hair like she was resetting a presentation slide. "I'm staying in the house, obviously. The kids will be with me full-time, primary custody. That's just the natural arrangement." She spoke slowly, like she wanted me to feel each hit but not react. "You'll take them every other weekend," she continued. "Maybe a weekday dinner if it makes sense. We'll be mature about it." I realized then she wasn't waiting for input. She was laying out her version of a court ruling. "And once you leave," she added, tapping her nails on the arm of the couch, "Steve will move in. Not right away, but soon. The kids already like him. He's good for them. More present than you." In that part, she said with intent, aimed right at me. "You're boring, Dante," she said. "You're quiet. You're absent. I've been carrying this marriage. I need someone who actually makes me feel alive." I almost laughed at the idea that Steve, who lived in a box-sized apartment he didn't pay for, was going to become the heroic father figure of her new reinvented life. But I kept my face still. Judy studied me, waiting for yelling or some dramatic collapse. She wanted a reaction she could weaponize later. What she got was one question. "So you're moving your ex into your parents' house with my kids? That's the plan?" She smirked. Slow, confident. She'd been waiting for me to say it out loud. "It's not a plan," she answered. "It's happening." Her whole posture said she thought she'd won. She thought the house was hers to command. She thought Gideon and Celeste would back her because they always had. She thought she could replace me, keep the property, keep the lifestyle, and rewrite the family around Steve. She was so sure of it that she had the nerve to adjust a throw pillow, like she was preparing the house for a new era. I didn't yell. I didn't pace. I didn't try to convince her she was making a mistake. There was nothing to salvage here. She'd crossed out the marriage long before this conversation. Instead, I walked down the hall to our room and pulled out a small overnight bag from under the bed. She must have heard the zipper, because she followed me to the doorway, arms crossed. "So you're leaving," she said, chin lifted. "Good. That's step one." I ignored her long enough to put in a pair of jeans, a shirt, and a few essentials. I zipped the bag closed, picked it up, and let her think, for about 3 seconds, that she had pushed me out. She even stepped aside to give me space. But instead of walking past her, I set the bag gently on the dresser and walked right back to the living room. She turned sharply, confused. "What are you doing? You said—" "I didn't say a thing," I replied, sitting down on the couch she'd just staged as her throne. She stared like she couldn't compute the move. "This isn't how this works, Dante," she snapped. "You can't just—" "I'm not leaving," I said calmly. She bristled. "You have to. This house isn't yours," I finished. "And I'm not walking out so you can move your boyfriend in before the dust settles." The look she gave me wasn't anger. It was disbelief. No one had ever refused one of her ultimatums. Not in childhood, not in adulthood, and definitely not in this house. She expected compliance. Instead, I sat there like a problem she suddenly didn't know how to solve. "Gideon and Celeste will side with me," she said, voice shaking now. Not with fear, but with the first hint of uncertainty. "They always have. They'll side with the truth," I said. She didn't understand what that meant yet. But by the time I finished sitting there, bag packed, patience steady, plans forming, she would. And tomorrow, the people who actually owned the deed would hear everything she'd been planning behind their backs. I wasn't leaving the house. Not until the board saw the full picture for themselves. The next morning, I didn't linger at home. I didn't wait for Judy to wake up and restart her performance. I got dressed, grabbed the bag I packed the night before, and drove straight to Gideon's main dealership office. The place was already busy. Salespeople setting up displays, techs rolling cars out of service bays, normal noise for a weekday morning. Gideon's assistant didn't even ask questions when I walked in. She just pointed me toward his office with a tight expression, like she already knew this wasn't a casual visit. When I stepped inside, Celeste was there too. She was standing next to Gideon's desk with her coat still on, as if she'd arrived minutes ago. The way both of them looked at me serious, alert, waiting, told me they'd sensed something brewing. Gideon motioned to the chair opposite him. "Sit," he said. Not unfriendly, but firm. I sat. No small talk. No warm-up. "I'm going to give you the facts," I said. "I don't need anything from you except to hear them." They nodded. So I started. "Judy's been seeing Steve again," I said plainly. "Not as friends, as an actual relationship." Celeste's eyebrows tightened, but she stayed quiet. I continued, laying it all out clean, just as it happened. No dramatics, no commentary. "She's planning to move him into the house," I said. "Her plan is for me to leave. She keeps the kids full-time, and Steve moves in once I'm gone." Gideon's jaw twitched in a way I'd only seen once, years ago, when a business partner tried to cheat him out of revenue. I kept going. "She's been threatening to take the kids using this property as leverage, telling me she'll stay here with them, because you'll back her." Celeste sat down slowly as I talked, hands folded tightly in her lap. I told them about Rowan's ice cream comment, how Steve had taken the kids out without me knowing, how Judy snapped at him for mentioning it, how her phone location kept disappearing, how she'd lied about errands and meetups. Then I took out my phone and placed it on the desk. "This is the reservation she made yesterday," I said, opening the shared iPad calendar screenshot. "Brunch near Steve's place. And this," I swiped to the next image, "is the photo I took of her lock screen preview last night. Tomorrow we talk about moving you in." Celeste's face lost all warmth. Not angry, cold, controlled. Gideon didn't speak. He stared at the screen like he was reading a betrayal in plain print. After a long moment, he asked one sharp question. "How long has she been seeing him?" "Months," I said. "Longer than she'll admit out loud." I expected disbelief, maybe denial, but neither of them looked surprised by the timeline, just disappointed. Then Celeste spoke first. "We warned her," she said quietly. "Months ago. We found messages between her and Steve. We told her to cut contact immediately. I hadn't known that. She promised us she had," Celeste continued, her voice going from hurt to something firmer. "She told us she was committed to her marriage, to the kids." Gideon's expression hardened. Silent fury. Not loud, not dramatic. Worse. "The house," he said slowly, "was meant to support a family. Not to fund an affair. Not to be used as leverage. Not for that man to step into." I said nothing. They weren't talking to me. They were processing their daughter's decisions. Celeste leaned back, hands tight on her knees. "Our grandchildren don't live with instability," she said. "Not in our home, not under our roof." She wasn't talking about me. She was talking about Judy. Gideon exhaled, long and controlled. Then he looked at me directly. "You and the kids stay." It wasn't a question. It wasn't even an offer. It was a decision. "Judy leaves," he added. "She made her choice." Celeste nodded once, sharply. "And Steve will never set foot inside that house. We'll make that clear." I felt the weight shift, not in my favor, not against Judy personally, but toward the kids. Everything they did was for them. Gideon stood up. "We're calling a family meeting tonight," he said. 7 o'clock. At the house. I knew exactly what that meant. Judy wouldn't expect this. She thought she'd walk into support and sympathy. Instead, she'd be walking into a truth she'd been avoiding for months. Celeste reached for her bag, but stopped and looked at me with a steady, unblinking expression. "Be here," she said. "She's going to explode when she hears it." There was no exaggeration in her voice. No fear either. Just certainty, like someone predicting weather they've seen 1,000 times. I nodded. No arguments, no victory laps. I just stood and left the office quietly. The decisions had been made. The meeting was set. And for the first time, Judy's trump card was about to be turned face up in front of the people who actually owned the deck. At 7 o'clock sharp, the four of us were in the living room, the same room where Judy had laid out her fantasy life 24 hours earlier. Gideon sat in his usual armchair, arms folded, expression carved from granite. Celeste stood beside him, posture straight, every detail of her face controlled. I sat on the edge of the couch, not speaking. The room was stiff with purpose. Judy walked in last. She didn't come in hesitant or nervous. She walked in like someone waiting to receive an award. Shoulders back, chin up, a small smirk like she'd already won a debate that hadn't started. "Oh," she said, looking around. "Everyone's here. Good. I wanted to talk about next steps anyway." She had no idea she'd walk straight into a wall. Gideon didn't stand. He didn't soften his voice. "Judy," he said, "sit down." She blinked at the tone, one she hadn't heard from him in years, but sat across from him anyway. Gideon didn't waste time. "We know everything," he said. Her smile froze. "Everything what? Steve?" he answered. The affair. Your plan to move him into this house, your threats, all of it. It was like watching a curtain drop. The confidence evaporated, replaced by instant calculation. Judy's brain switched gears so fast you could practically hear it. Her first move was tears. Not quiet tears. Dramatic ones. She pressed her hands to her eyes like she'd been struck. I can't believe he would twist things like this, she said between gasps, pointing toward me. He manipulated you. He's trying to turn you against your own daughter. No one moved. Judy peeked through her fingers to gauge the room. She didn't see sympathy, so she escalated. You're choosing him over me? She shouted. Your son-in-law? Over your own blood? He's lying. You're falling for it. Celeste's voice came in calm and even. We're choosing the kids, Judy. Over chaos. Over dishonesty. Over instability. That shut Judy up mid-breath. Celeste wasn't someone who raised her voice. She didn't need to. Gideon leaned forward. You're not staying in this house, he said. And Steve is not stepping foot in it. Judy shot up from the couch so fast it scraped against the hardwood. You can't tell me that? This house is supposed to be mine. It's not, Gideon said. It's ours. And we made the rules, not you. She pointed at me like she was presenting evidence. He filled your heads with lies. I didn't have to, I said. You wrote the script yourself. That pushed her from tears to full rage. The kind that turns her voice sharp enough to cut drywall. I'm your daughter, she screamed at her parents. You owe me loyalty. Not him. Gideon didn't flinch. Loyalty doesn't cover destroying your own family. That was the match. Judy's voice went up loud enough that I knew the neighbors could hear through the walls. She paced, shouting, ranting, replaying her own arguments back at herself. Then there was a knock on the front door. Loud, confused. A neighbor asking if everything was okay. Celeste answered the door with a quiet apology and closed it again. Judy didn't even slow down. After another round of yelling, she ran upstairs. We heard her closet doors slam open, drawers yanked, hangers dragged across metal. She was throwing clothes into bags with the force of someone trying to make a point through fabric. Halfway down the stairs, she shouted her next threat. I'll call child services. I'll tell them he's unstable. You'll regret doing this to me. I sat there, perfectly still. She wanted fear. She wanted reaction. I wasn't giving her either. Gideon looked up at her without a flicker of emotion. Go ahead, he said. Tell them. Then tell them why you thought moving an affair partner into our property with 2 children was responsible. Judy froze for half a heartbeat. Then she stomped the rest of the way down, bags over her shoulder, eyes wild. You're all insane, she spat. You'll see. Everyone will see. She stormed out the door and slammed it behind her like she owned hinges and gravity. Then she peeled out of the driveway toward Steve's apartment. Late that night, a USPS change of address confirmation landed in our household inbox, forwarding Judy's mail to Steve's building. Shortly after, a utility start service notice arrived for that same unit in her name. I saved both. The house went silent. Rowan and Kit weren't there, but it felt like we were protecting the space for when they came home. I gathered the bags she didn't take and set them aside. Gideon sat down heavily, Celeste rubbing his shoulder. They didn't look triumphant. They looked like parents mourning a daughter who'd walked willingly into a disaster. Later that night, around 10, my phone vibrated with a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. I hadn't heard it ring. Whoever called hung up quickly. I played the message. Hi, this is Ms. Drayton from the school office. We received a home safety report from Judy and, per policy, forwarded it to Child Protective Services. We do need to check in. Could you return this call so we can confirm everything is safe with Rowan and Kit? I called back and confirmed the referral. They were required to pass it along. I didn't need anyone to tell me who filed it. Judy hadn't even been gone a full hour before trying to turn the system into her personal megaphone. She wanted the neighborhood to hear her. Now she wanted the school to hear her too. She wasn't done making noise. By mid-morning, Celeste and Gideon were already at the house to steady the kids' routines. Celeste kept them busy at the dining table, while Gideon tackled a squeaky cabinet hinge. Child Protective Services didn't waste time. Because the school had flagged Judy's report to them that evening, a worker showed up at the door early the next afternoon. She explained the visit calmly, clipboard in hand, and stepped inside. The house was spotless, not staged, just normal. Toys in baskets, dishes put away, laundry folded. Rowan and Kit were playing with Celeste at the dining table, working on a puzzle. Gideon was fixing a hinge on a cabinet door. No chaos, no tension, just regular life. The worker glanced around, took notes, asked routine questions. Had the kids eaten? Any injuries? Any incidents recently? Rowan answered half the questions before anyone else could. Kit chimed in with their own commentary. The worker smiled, wrote something down, and glanced at me. Looks stable, she said. I'll finish my report. 10 minutes later, she closed her folder. I'm marking this as a retaliatory filing, she said. We'll notify the school as well. You'll receive confirmation. One problem handled. The bigger one was coming. We filed for emergency temporary orders that afternoon, and the court set a short notice hearing 3 days later. I walked in with my attorney, calm and steady. Gideon and Celeste were already seated behind us. Present, clear-eyed, not wavering. Judy arrived with Leora trailing behind her like a personal hype squad. Judy had done her makeup in the exact way she does before family photos. Soft, innocent, intentional. She carried tissues before anything had even started. As soon as her side was called, she unleashed the performance. She dabbed at tears that hadn't fully formed. She sniffed dramatically. She spoke in a trembling voice, claiming I had isolated her, controlled the finances, and made her walk on eggshells. Leora nodded fiercely at every sentence, as if her approval counted as evidence. Then Judy added, He twisted my parents against me. He made them think I'm unstable. None of this is my fault. I'm being pushed out of my own home. Her attorney wrapped it up with a dramatic closing about a mother's bond and the children's need for their primary emotional caregiver. My attorney didn't bother with theatrics. She stood, laid out documents neatly, and spoke plainly. First, Mrs. Hargrove moved out voluntarily, she said. Here are the time-stamped confirmations. A USPS change of address forwarding her mail to Steve's address, and a utility start service order in her name for that unit. She passed it to the judge. Second, here is a screenshot where she and Mr. Hargrove's minor child identify her affair partner, Steve, as someone who has already been alone with the children. Another document handed over. Third, here is a time-stamped photo of her lock screen preview showing that line. The printed photo hit the table with a soft slap. Fourth, she continued, the house in question is owned entirely by Mr. and Mrs. Marlowe, Gideon and Celeste, not by either spouse. It was never transferred during the marriage. We have deed documents, tax filings, and accompanying correspondence. She gestured behind us. They are both present to testify. Judy stiffened. Leora whispered something frantic into her ear. Judy's lawyer scrambled for footing. Your Honor, the house was gifted to the marriage. It functions as marital property. Mrs. Hargrove should remain there for the children's stability. The judge nodded toward Gideon. Mr. Marlowe, please step forward. Gideon didn't hesitate. He walked to the witness stand, placed one hand on the rail, and answered every question clearly. We purchased that home for our grandchildren, he said. It was never transferred to either spouse. We allowed them to live there because we believed they were providing a stable family environment. He looked directly at Judy before turning back to the judge. That stability no longer exists with her choices. The home was intended to protect our grandkids. That protection still stands. The judge didn't need more than that. She reviewed the paperwork, glanced over her notes, and gave her ruling. Primary residence for the children will remain with their father, Dante Hargrove. He is in the family home, and the grandparents who own the property have made their expectations clear. Judy's breath hitched loudly. The judge continued. Mrs. Hargrove will have visitation every other weekend and one midweek evening. Judy gasped like she'd been slapped. And, the judge added, turning a page, the individual known as Steve may not be around the children for 6 months to ensure transitional stability. Judy's chair scraped the floor as she stood up too fast. You can't do this. You can't. The judge gave her a calm look. I just did. Outside the courtroom, Judy stormed into the hallway, voice raised enough that someone down the corridor paused mid-step. You stole my life, she screamed at me. Tears streaked her makeup, but she wasn't sad. She was enraged. I looked at her, steady and unshaken. You handed it over when you tried to move him into our kids' bedrooms. Leora gasped as if the words physically hit her. Judy opened her mouth to fire something back, but someone else stepped out of a nearby doorway. Maeve. She crossed her arms, watching Judy with a look that said she'd stopped believing her months ago. She stepped close enough for only me to hear. She's already spinning a story online, she said. And Steve is bragging like he won. I nodded once. The war Judy thought she could control was about to break open in a place she couldn't script. Public opinion. And she wasn't ready for what that would look like. By noon, the day after the custody hearing, Judy had already launched her next attack. A full-length post went up on her social media, several paragraphs long, written like a dramatic memoir drafted in the middle of the night. She called herself an emotionally abandoned wife. She claimed Gideon and Celeste were manipulated by Dante, and the closing line was the real punch. He stole the kids from me. Within minutes, Leora was in the comments section doing damage control like she was being paid for it. "You're so strong, Judy. Everyone knows Dante is cold. This was abuse disguised as stability. Courts get it wrong all the time." She replied to every critical comment, arguing with strangers like she was trying to earn a courtroom victory through emojis and emotional monologues. I didn't engage at first. I let it run until the comment section started tugging at my phone, trying to bait me into defending myself. Then I posted one sentence, "No more." She left the family before she left the house. I didn't post again. I didn't argue. I didn't touch the thread after that. You drop truth like that once and you walk away. The deletion attempt started 20 minutes later. Judy removed a few comments, blocked 3 people, tried rewriting the caption, but it was too late, because Maeve saw the post, and Maeve didn't mince words. She commented publicly, "I watched her planning to move Steve in while still married. Stop lying for her." No theatrics, no long explanation. Just a clean fact from someone who used to be Judy's best friend. That was the moment the whole thread flipped. People who had been offering sympathy suddenly pulled back. Others started asking questions Judy couldn't answer without exposing herself further. Why was Steve alone with your kids? Isn't the deed in your parents' names? Didn't you move out first? Why did the judge keep the kids with Dante? Every attempt Judy made to defend herself only fed more contradictions. Leora kept trying to patch the holes, but she didn't have enough hands. Eventually, she started arguing with 3 people at once, then 5, then 10. Her tone went from confident to panicked, then disappeared entirely. By evening, the entire thread had transformed from a sympathy grab to a roast session she couldn't stop. It wasn't cruel. It was factual. And then things got worse for her. 2 days later, Steve posted on his own social media a photo of him with another woman, some sunny background, his arm around her shoulders. Caption: "Surround yourself with people who don't bring drama into your life." Comments full of hearts and cheering emojis. Judy wasn't mentioned, not even referenced. She wasn't even a footnote in his new chapter. That was the final confirmation. She had blown up her marriage, her home, her reputation, and her relationship with her parents for a man who dropped her the second consequences showed up. A week after Steve's post, Judy showed up at my door with Leora standing behind her like a backup vocalist. Judy didn't knock gently. She pounded. When I opened the door, she stood there with red-rimmed eyes and a shaky posture, but her voice was still sharp enough to try cutting through me. "I need closure," she said, "and a chance to fix this." Leora nodded aggressively, as if that somehow made the demand official. Judy stepped closer. "You can't just move on like nothing happened. Most men would fight for me." I couldn't help it. The smile that came out wasn't cruel, just clean, precise. "Most men would have fought to keep you," I said. "I fought to keep the kids safe." Leora gasped, hand to her chest like I'd committed a crime. "You're heartless," she snapped. I shrugged once. Heartless is a strange word for not tolerating disrespect. Judy opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. Just the sound of someone trying to force a narrative that wouldn't cooperate anymore. I stepped back inside and closed the door. They left without another word. About a month later, Gideon and Celeste invited me to the dealership office again. Not an emergency this time, more like formal business. Gideon slid a folder across the desk toward me. Inside was a trust document, clean, notarized, already filed. The house was being placed into a trust for Rowan and Kit. Not for Judy, not jointly, not someday. Immediately. Gideon and Celeste were named as trustees. I signed an occupancy agreement as the children's residential guardian, meaning I remain in the house on their behalf until they are grown, or the trustees decide circumstances require a change. Celeste explained it simply. "We want the kids to always have a home. This guarantees it." There was no anger in her voice, no bitterness, just a clear understanding of what stability should look like for grandchildren who didn't ask to be part of a divorce. Gideon added, "She thought the house made her powerful. She forgot it's ours." I signed the acknowledgement paperwork and thanked them. They didn't do it for me. They did it for Rowan and Kit, but it still mattered. Judy found out 2 days later. She didn't call. She didn't text. She showed up at her parents' front door and unleashed another screaming match loud enough that their neighbors heard every word. Her parents' neighbors recorded it. Different street, same spectacle. Every shout Judy made only proved the exact point the trust document had been created to solve. Instability doesn't get rewarded, especially when children are involved. In the end, Judy learned the same truth everyone else eventually saw. She wanted to use their money like a weapon. They just made sure the bill landed where it belonged.